The election campaign season now is in full swing following the filing of candidates for the upcoming fall elections. We have a candidate joining us right now at NCWLIFE News. His name is Robert Moelder, and he's a candidate seeking election to the Chelan County Board of Commissioners, representing District 2, which is mostly the Upper Valley. That seat being vacated by Keith Gaynor. Mr. Moelder, I'm just meeting you, as a matter of fact, although you've been living in the Wenatchee area for quite some time. You have a background in law enforcement. Here's your opportunity to state your case to the voters of Chelan County on NCWLIFE.
Well, I actually moved here a little over 10 years ago, and by means of working for the U.S. Forest Service. And I had a job in the supervisor's office here in Wenatchee. And I was fortunate enough to find a home to live in Kashmir. And as we were just talking about,
yeah, that was an ordeal too, huh?
It was. I really feel fortunate to have found a home. I think finding homes in the market price range of wage earners up and down the valley is becoming more and more difficult, and that's certainly an issue that I'm concerned about, and might be become more and more important to my campaign as I try to connect with voters up and down the Wenatchee Valley.
Let's talk about your background. Mostly, your resume reads like a lot of law enforcement experience here. Again, Forest Service. Yeah.
Well, so I'd like to back up and
Sure.
talk about my background. You know, really in its beginnings. After graduating from high school in a small town in South Dakota that is an agricultural-based community. Mm-hmm. I went off and served in the U.S. Army. After getting out of the Army and being honorably discharged, that was really by the means that I was able to attend the University of South Dakota and get a degree in criminal justice studies with a minor in political science. So you might say the seeds of serving in government office were planted early in my education and formative years.
What drew you towards that career path?
Well, having served as a military policeman in the Army, I ended up seeking employment at as a deputy sheriff at the county sheriff's office, actually in my hometown. And I honestly didn't think that I was going to leave hometown and go to school, but you've got to grab the tiger by the tail, so to say, and take opportunity where it presents itself. Mm-hmm. I ended up leaving the deputy sheriff's position and working as a municipal officer in the university town of Vermillion, South Dakota. Mm-hmm. But I eventually found my way into what collectively we refer to as land management agencies, and I found that there was an opportunity to work for the National Park Service. I worked for the National Park Service in South Dakota at Mount Rushmore.
Oh, really?
And then Devil's Tower, and that opportunity led me to southern Nevada, where I lived in the small town of Boulder City, Nevada.
Outside of Las Vegas.
Yeah, mm-hmm. And I worked at the Lake Mead National Recreation Area. It's an area of water and land on the Arizona-Nevada border. And coincidentally, I feel like that's where a lot of the experiences that I feel that I'm bringing to this position that I'm seeking have been learned. There's a large urban center of Las Vegas that has impacts on the small community of Boulder City that I lived in. And so I think that our community is experiencing some growing pains, that I've observed how other communities have dealt with these issues. And I want to bring that knowledge and experience to this opportunity.
So you have background and experience, let's say, not only in law enforcement, but in land management as well, land use restrictions and such. And that sounds like it would translate well into a county commissioner position.
Yeah, we have a lot of public lands in our county. Some people would try to espouse that the county border ends at the Forest Service boundary. Well, it really doesn't. Our county is very large. It goes all the way up to the crest of the Cascade Range and all the way down to the Columbia River. And we do have a lot of public lands that are managed. I think that my public lands experience is going to suit itself well for this position as well. And then, having worked specifically in law enforcement for these agencies, we have a lot of community services that the county provides. EMS, fire, law enforcement primarily are ones that I've had firsthand knowledge and experience in.
Now, in your former positions with the Forest Service and the Park Service, what was your experience in working with other, let's say, entities, other government entities, such as local and state government, county?
Well, really quite specific to this opportunity, in my capacity, although I was assigned to the Wenatchee office, I worked with counties, 7 different counties in central and northeastern Washington, and those counties had interface with the Colville, Okanagan, and Wenatchee National Forest land areas. And of course I supervised employees, public servants that were scattered over that 7-county area that were working cooperatively with county governments. And part of my responsibility was to engage with county governments to administer contracts so that we could work cooperatively together on law enforcement issues affecting the citizens of each of those counties.
You're walking into a position here that, if elected, you would be dealing with some pretty controversial issues relating to publicly owned lands. I know one of them being currently the 8 Mile Dam issue up in the Alpine Lakes Wilderness. There's obviously some challenges in getting repairs made to that century-old dam up there, but you're running into some wilderness land use restrictions there. There's also the issue of the grizzly bears being reintroduced into the North Cascades. How do you deal with that? Obviously, you come into these issues with a different perspective and maybe a broader perspective.
I would certainly agree with that. I do have the fortune of having worked with agencies that are tackling these issues. That's probably the biggest hurdle of this position. It's about bringing people together, different agencies with different perspectives and different priorities together to reach a resolution and effective leadership forward on some of these issues. It's funny that you mentioned the 8 Mile Creek and the drainage issues. You know, that honestly speaks to one of my platforms, and that is, that's not something that just happened overnight. And frequently what I see is we're not doing preventative engagement on issues, we're waiting till it's a crisis. And everybody knows that if you don't invest in prevention, it costs more to respond in an emergency fashion. And I just have to question, you know, why weren't we engaged on the spillway being clogged? You know, this seems to have been a recurring problem. We've known that it's there, and instead we wait until the spring runoff when it becomes a crisis. And of course, contracting for services to repair things when it's an emergency crisis, you know, the costs go up exponentially, and that's a cost that's passed on to the taxpayers and the citizens of this district. We need to really be proactive. We need to be looking forward so that we can be responsive to emerging issues before it becomes a crisis.
So do you think the current board was delinquent in not addressing this earlier?
I don't know that the word delinquent is the right word, but it clearly, if we look back in some of the media sources, this isn't the first time that this has been reported as a potential issue. I just think that we could have invested more time up front, let's say in the fall, when there's not heavy runoff, to deal with the problem at a significant cost savings to the taxpayers.
Okay, let's talk about Robert Moelder as a commissioner and steward of taxpayer money.
Well, I feel I alone am the one person that has experience managing taxpayer dollars. I've had to do that, well, in the last 10 years, from 2009 when I arrived in the community to when I just recently left about 18 months ago. You know, we were doing that under constraining federal budgets, and so we had to eke as much as we could out of every dollar to make sure that it was effectively spent. So my values, growing up in an agricultural community, I certainly am a conservative. I think that the citizens deserve the most for their dollar, and I've had to do that. I have demonstrated experience managing tax dollars, which really sets me apart from some of the other candidates. A lot of the other candidates are coming into the race with private business experience, and spending private money is markedly different than spending tax dollars.
We're talking right now with Robert Moelder, candidate for District 2 position on the Chelan County Board of Commissioners. Your private life, let's talk about that for a second. Your family. Well,
I've recently remarried, I had another marriage that didn't quite work out, and so I found my lovely wife recently here in the local community. She actually grew up in Battleground, and it's been such a joy to find a meaningful relationship, and my wife and I plan on living in Kashmir, for the foreseeable future.
As a commissioner too, you're also required to represent the commission on various boards, governing boards, LINC, mental health, the health district, and what have you. Is there anything that you're particularly interested in that you feel that you might best serve the county?
I think that there are a lot of urban pressures from communities on the west side that are going to cause an emerging problem of potential homelessness. I see more and more people that don't seem to have a means to support themselves showing up in our communities. That's a problem that needs to be addressed. In my last position before I left the Forest Service, I actually happened to have an opportunity to speak with the mental health board and represent the Forest Service, because we do have a lot of homelessness impacts on our public lands as well, and that's why I was invited to that forum. That would be an issue that I'm certainly concerned about. And I might add that we have a lot of wage earners that work up and down the valley that support our vibrant community and all the small businesses throughout the community. And many of them, I hear, are struggling to basically save enough money to be able to make a down payment on a home. And home costs are rising, and that only exacerbates the problem. Some of the people that I visited with and some of the small businesses talk about that their workers have no place to even live where they can afford rent. And people are, and I just found this out the other day, there are people living in cars but yet have jobs to support some of our small businesses in the local area. That's not really a situation that I think that we want to continue to grow out of control.
Well, that is a big challenge, and certainly one of the big obstacles towards economic development in this area as well. How do you see yourself working with, let's say, some of the other jurisdictions, Douglas County, Grant County?
Well, I think that my experience that I spoke to previously, having worked with other counties already, is going to lend itself to being able to be engaging on issues that affect our region, let alone just our county. It is about bringing people together that have a vested interest in working together on these issues that affect our community. We want to maintain the vibrant communities that make our quality of life so appealing here, why we've all chose to live and stay here. And we really do need a level of engagement with all agencies.
Robert Moelder, candidate for Chelan County Commissioner, I'll give you the last word. Is there anything you'd like to add into our conversation here that you'd like to share with our viewers?
Well, I would just say that we have a number of people that need a representation at our local government level. Certainly there are a lot of wage earners that support our vibrant industry, our small businesses up and down the valley, and they need to have a voice in local government. Far too often, it seems like our government representatives at local government are coming from only one genre of experience, and I would hope that the citizens of the county, particularly District 2, would see that I have a broad experience, having lived in a number of different communities, that there are progressive views based on conservative values that we can tackle many of the emerging problems that our community is struggling to deal with.
Well, it's a packed house. We've got 5 candidates seeking election to that particular office. The August primary will whittle that down to the top 2 candidates. And in the primary, it's just the District 2 voters that will be voting. But then when the top 2 vote getters advance to November, it becomes a countywide vote. So we wish you the best of luck in your campaign, and well, good luck to you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your taking time out to talk to us.
Absolutely.
You betcha. Robert Moelder, seeking election to the Chelan County Board of Commissioners. I'm Steve Hare, NCWLIFE News.